We begin this morning with the extreme heat that is stretching across the country with wide-ranging impacts. The dry conditions in the Southwest are fanning a massive brush fire in Scottsdale, Arizona. Huge plumes of black smoke could be seen rising in the air as firefighters and air tankers battle the flames. So far, at least 2,500 acres have burned, with more than 1,000 people forced to evacuate their homes.
We're asking people to continue to stay out of the area. This is an active scene still.
We're just asking people to be, just patient with us. We're doing everything that we can.
And smoke from Canadian wildfires is back. That is creating unhealthy air conditions for cities from Chicago to New York. The National Weather Service has issued air quality alerts for parts of Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. It says that poor air quality could stick around for a few days and spread into the Northeast. This is what it looks like in Chicago this morning. Take a look at that thick blanket of smoke obscuring the Lake Michigan shoreline. And in the South, the record heat is stretching into another day in Texas, and that is taxing the state's power grid. The dangerous heat indexes also expanding to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. We have team coverage. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is tracking the conditions. But first, we begin with NBC News correspondent Sam Brock in New Orleans.
Good morning. I am in downtown New Orleans right now on the banks of the Mississippi River, and it is already almost 90 degrees. The day has not even started yet. This is technically day 2 of what could be a 5 or 6 day extreme heat event here in New Orleans, maybe even longer than that. The officials locally are planning on raising the EOC status, the Emergency Operations Center, to a level 3 crisis moving into the weekend, which means there's going to be unified command calls. They'll have transportation at the ready to go into neighborhoods where people are potentially suffering and need to get out of the heat. I spoke with Mayor Cantrell yesterday here in New Orleans. She said that one of the things they're really focusing on right now are those cooling and hydration centers. They had the blueprint, Joe, already put into place from Hurricane Ida. There was a heat advisory after that horrible event here, and they had the infrastructure established to help people when there was extreme heat, which is exactly what we're looking at right now. Complicating the matters is the fact that going into this weekend, the Essence Festival is going to be held here in New Orleans. That is hundreds of thousands of people packed onto the streets here as temperatures are easily going to approach triple digits. The heat index is expected to reach as high as 120 degrees. That's what it's going to feel like on the ground. So all of those issues coming together as throughout the region right now, millions of people looking at triple-digit temperatures. That goes really from Arizona and New Mexico across Texas to Louisiana, where we are, and then all the way out to Florida. As far as Texas is concerned, ERCOT, which is the operator of the electrical grid in that state, just announced yesterday unofficially that they had broken their all-time record in June for daily usage. Now, the electricity is flowing, but it definitely speaks to the fact that this heat wave has been unrelenting for weeks now. It's been days here in Louisiana, but weeks in Texas, and it just continues. While we are also seeing other effects of severe weather, this time from the north in Canada. All of that smoke coming from the wildfires is once again migrating to the United States and covering up landmarks from the Mackinac Bridge in Michigan yesterday to the city of Chicago, which saw over the course of the day its skyline in Lake Michigan suddenly shrouded in haze. The question now is all that haze moving to New York City. It could be there as early as today, as the entire country, straddling really all portions of it, is dealing with some sense of severe weather. In New Orleans, Sam Brock, NBC News. Back to you.
All right, Sam, thank you so much. Let's get more on the dangerous heat and poor air quality with your Morning News Now weather forecast. Meteorologist Michelle Grossman's here. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. And yeah, we're going to continue to see that heat expanding as we go throughout the next couple of days. So we've been watching this for weeks and weeks. We're going to continue to watch this for at least through the weekend. 69 million Americans under some sort of heat alert, whether it's a heat advisory, a heat watch, a heat warning. The excessive heat warning is in that hot pink color. But notice California now also seeing some heat alerts. That's in the valleys where we're looking at a heat watch and also a heat advisory. But the advisory, as Sam mentioned, we're looking at anywhere from New Mexico all the way to portions of Florida and then moving north to parts of the Mississippi Valley into parts of the Ohio Valley. It is all due to this heat dome that's been tacked in place for the past few weeks, continuing to be tacked in place. It's going to start to move slowly and start to expand. So look at some of these numbers. 102 in Tulsa today. That's 12 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. Lubbock, once again, into the the triple digits as well, 105, 107 in San Angelo. Dallas, 10 degrees above what is typical for this time of year at 103. We're warm in Memphis as well. And then by tomorrow, this moves off to the north and also the east. St. Louis, the 100-degree mark, 12 degrees above average. Nashville, 96, 100 degrees in Birmingham. And it's not just the south that's experiencing the heat as we go throughout this holiday weekend. We're going to see D.C. near 90 degrees on Friday, near 90 degrees on Saturday. Same story on Sunday. You factor in that humidity, it's going to feel warmer than that. So that's the heat story. Also talking about the air quality forecast, it is dismal in many, many spots. We have ozone concerns, Canadian wildfire concerns. So if you can, stay indoors, close your windows, spend as much time as you can inside with that air conditioner on. 87 million Americans impacted by poor air quality today, especially where you see this red color. So throughout the Great Lakes, parts of the Midwest, and then extending into parts of the Northeast and also the Mid-Atlantic. That's going to be a story over the next few days. And look at some of these numbers. We're looking at Des Moines. That's one of the worst spots. Chicago was just terrible yesterday. Once again, we're going to see very poor air quality today. So we have the heat. We have the smoke. Now we have some storms that we're watching. Look at radar. Not too bad right now. We're not looking at extensive coverage of some storms, but still looking at radar. Where you see these brighter colors, that's where we're seeing the heaviest rain falling. So throughout portions of the Midwest into the Great Lakes, also parts of New England into the Northeast, we have two separate stories. We have an area of low pressure that's been kind of lingering over the Northeast the past few days. It's continuing to do so today. So we're looking at lingering showers and storms in the Northeast, parts of the Northeast as well. New York City, you could see some showers today. And then we're looking at the chance for strong to severe storms in parts of Minnesota into Wisconsin. Scattered storms roll through New England. Same story as we look at Minnesota, Wisconsin. We could see some hail, some really strong winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, and also the chance of an isolated tornado. This would be the likeliest spot just east of Minneapolis, where you see the yellow, west of Green Bay. We're going to experience the chance for some hail, some damaging winds, and also a few isolated tornadoes. This is as we see tomorrow. We're looking at 18 million people at risk for large hail, winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. And this area kind of expands where you see that yellow. So portions of the Midwest, we're looking at Peoria, Chicago, Indianapolis, Louisville, and also Evansville. So we have a lot going on. We have heat, we have the air quality, we have storms, and this is just going to go on and on. The East Coast this holiday weekend looking pretty soggy.
All right, that's not good. And some parts of the country right now is seeing the storms and the smoke right now, so they're getting a little mix of everything. All right, Michelle, thank you so much. President Biden will be in Chicago today to deliver what the White House is calling a major address on the economy. The president plans to tout his economic record as he ramps up his re-election campaign. NBC News senior national political reporter Peter Nicholas joins us now with a preview. So, Peter, good morning. So the White House says this speech is going to focus on the president's vision for growing the economy. They're trying to give it a catchy name, Bidenomics. So what should we expect, and why Chicago?
Well, I think what we can expect is a recitation of the president's accomplishments. This is an election season. President will use this visit to talk about investments he's made in infrastructure, in education. He'll talk about job growth on his watch. So I don't think we're going to see anything new here. I don't think he's going to lay out new policies or new programs. This is essentially part of a tour that he's making and his surrogates are making around the country to try to tout and promote achievements on his watch. Why Chicago? Well, Chicago is Illinois is not a swing state necessarily. It's a solidly blue state. Democrats do well there. But there is a lot of fundraising dollars to be picked up in Chicago. The president will be attending a fundraiser there. And so he's mixing a little bit of business with his speech with campaign fundraising work.
Yeah, clearly this is all part of his re-election campaign. A recent NBC News poll shows President Biden's job performance really rating it's staying flat the last couple of months, not going up, not really going down. The economy and inflation we know have been top of mind for Americans this last year. Many are worried about their money. So can we expect this Bidenomics message to be a major part of his argument for a second term?
I think that's right. He has a lot of work to do on this front. Polling shows that most people actually believe Donald Trump did a better job when it comes to managing the economy than Joe Biden. There was a recent poll from the Associated Press that showed only 33% of adults think Biden has done a good job managing the economy. So there's a disconnect between how Biden is portraying the economy and how people are really living the economy in their day-to-day lives. Inflation has been dropping, but still remains high. Gas prices are high. Inflation was 9% last year. So people are not really feeling the impact, the positive impact of what Biden says are his economic programs. They're not feeling that in their daily lives.
All right. Clearly, I still need to learn how to say Bidenomics. I'll work on it. Peter Nicholas, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Later today, Georgia's Secretary of State is scheduled to answer questions from federal investigators. It is part of a probe into former President Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. At the heart of this meeting is a recording from that now infamous phone call in January 2021, where the former president seems to pressure Georgia election officials to find more votes in his favor. NBC News Justice reporter Ryan Riley joins us now with the latest on what we can expect from this meeting today. So, Ryan, Brad Raffensperger is going to be questioned. We know many of those questions could focus on that phone call. We've heard it many times, but what else could be included in this meeting?
I think the context around the phone call is something that he could do a good job of explaining and just, going through why it was so clear that this was sort of a bogus made up thing that the president was looking for, and, going into how he interpreted the meeting itself and whether or not he felt pressured, the phone call itself, and whether or not he felt pressured by the former president to, quote unquote, find, those 11,000 votes or so that Trump said he would need to. So I think, it's obviously the phone call is the best evidence here. The recording is the best evidence, but, there's certainly some context around it that he might be able to explain. Prosecutors and they actually need him before a grand jury.
So, Ryan, this investigation, we should be clear, is separate from the one that's being conducted by a special grand jury, which was appointed by the Fulton County District Attorney. Raffensperger testified in that investigation last year. What do his comments back then, and really the many comments we've heard from him publicly, what do they tell us about what he might say today?
Yeah, he's told the story several times in several forums, so I think, not a ton of surprises coming there. I think that the difference between this local special probe that's being run by the local prosecutors there, and of course the sprawling federal investigation by Jack Smith's office is just the broader context of it in terms of Jack Smith's office has hauled a lot of people before that grand jury, including called fake electors from other states. They also had a former Trump campaign official who actually allegedly delivered those so-called fake electors to Congress the day before the January 6th attack. So that's someone who's really the center of this, and I think it just shows, how wide this probe really is from the Justice Department and Jack Smith, looking at sort of every aspect of this, running all the way from after Trump's election loss all the way to and through January 6th.
So, Ryan, a charging decision in that Fulton County probe could come by the end of August. What is the latest there? Could those findings then have any bearing on this much larger federal investigation?
Certainly, it's something that the feds are aware of, and I think, the feds are going to be involved in any security measures around that decision if that comes in July or in August. And I think that, that's something that they're going to factor in, but they're on separate tracks. These are just basically separate investigations. They would be separate charges, even though it's the same conduct at issue here in some, in some way. These are completely separate charges and separate alleged violations or potential alleged violations of the law, both on the state level and the federal level. So just different charges that can be brought forward, and the conduct in the Jack Smith's probe is obviously much more involved than just limited to what happened in Georgia alone.
All right, Ryan, appreciate your reporting. Thanks for joining us. Now, amid these investigations, the summer campaign season is kicking into high gear, with the leading Republican presidential contenders taking part in dueling events in New Hampshire. That state is home to the first in the nation Republican primary. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard has the latest from the campaign trail.
God bless New Hampshire, and God bless America. Thank you.
The battle for New Hampshire intensifying in the Republican primary. GOP frontrunners Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis hosting dueling events just 40 miles apart.
He's holding an event right now to compete with us. There's only one problem. Nobody showed up.
DeSantis at a town hall asking voters to move on from the drama surrounding Trump's 2020 defeat.
If this election is about Biden's failures and our vision for the future, we are going to win. If it's about relitigating things that happened 2-3 years ago, we're going to lose.
New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation primary, a critical test for both candidates.
We want to thank the people of New Hampshire.
In 2016, New Hampshire gave Donald Trump his first primary victory, helping lift him over a crowded GOP field in March to the Republican nomination. 7 years later, Trump's support in the Granite State still rock solid. A New Hampshire poll out shows Trump leading DeSantis in the state by 28 points.
Somebody said, how come you only attack him? I said, because he's in second place. Well, why don't you attack others? Because they're not in second place. But soon, I don't think he'll be in second place, so I'll be attacking somebody else.
Donald Trump!
New Hampshire Republican voters we spoke to excited about the possibility of a second Trump term in the White House.
But I loved what he did.
Why not Ron DeSantis?
He became governor of Florida. He needs to finish that job, and I believe he still has time. You know, Trump needs to finish. He needs to finish this.
And a candidate new to the campaign with an embarrassing air. Republican Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, in a radio interview with Hugh Hewitt, fumbling a foreign policy question about the Muslim minority group being persecuted in China, the Uyghurs.
Will you be talking about the Uyghurs in your campaign?
The what?
The Uyghurs.
What's a Uyghur?
Okay, we'll come back to that. You won't be. You got to get smart on that.
Suarez releasing a statement to try and clean things up, saying, "Of course, I am well aware of the suffering of the Uyghurs in China. They are being enslaved because of their faith. I didn't recognize the pronunciation my friend Hugh Hewitt used. That's on me."
That was Von Hilliard reporting. Now, after the lunch, Trump then visited the home of his new campaign headquarters in the state. The New Hampshire primary will take place next February. As we await some major rulings from the Supreme Court this week, one ruling released yesterday is making headlines. Justices ruled against giving state legislatures unchecked control over federal elections. It's a case that could have potentially upended state election laws across the country. In a 6-3 ruling, the justices decided not to side with North Carolina Republicans. They were pushing to empower state legislatures to set election rules with little to no oversight from state courts. It's known as the independent state legislature theory. For more on this, we're going to bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Danny, so help us understand what exactly, first of all, was this case all about?
The Constitution appears to say that state legislatures are the ones that are in charge of handling and arranging and organizing state elections. So the argument here by one side was that that language in the Constitution makes it so that the state legislature makes all the decisions and it cannot be overturned by a state court or anyone else. That is unfettered power that is given to the state legislature by the Constitution. And therefore, should they choose to gerrymander, should they choose to draw districts the way they want to, nobody can stop them. The challenge there is that the same language in the Constitution, as you go a little further past that language, appears to imply that there is some federal and other outside role. So that's exactly what this case was about. And going forward, it means that state legislatures still have considerable power, Joe. They still have most of the power, so to speak. But there is some oversight. What exactly that is may still remain to be seen, but the lesson from today, from yesterday's decision, is that state legislatures do not reign supreme. They can be reeled in by a state Supreme Court.
So let's delve a little deeper into this decision. What are the possible implications of it? Why is it seen as a victory for voting rights advocates?
For exactly that reason. So, for example, if a state legislature wanted to draw the most ridiculous gerrymandered map that completely favored, for example, one race over another, one religion over another, in a way that had nothing to do with geography, then the argument here would have been that, well, that's the state legislature. Maybe they were elected. That's how they got there. But the Constitution says they get to make that decision without any outside influence, and nobody gets to review it. That may have been the direction had this case gone the other way. Almost from the outset, this theory was a bit, and that's the problem with the Constitution. It's written in that old-timey language, and sometimes it causes us modern folks some confusion. So that's what the Supreme Court's for. This is democracy. This is the system working the way it's supposed to. The Supreme Court had to literally analyze the original document, the Constitution, and interpret it for us.
Not a lot of hashtags in the Constitution.
None.
All right, I'm going to completely switch gears here while we have you. I want to talk to you about Kevin Spacey. This is happening overseas. The actor's in a London court this morning for the start of his trial. He's facing a dozen charges related to sexual offenses in the UK, which he denies. Walk us through this case, the charges he's facing, and what the possible outcomes are here.
There are 4 different victims. The charges range from 2001 to 2013, with some of the more recent ones only recently added in the last several months. But they're all being tried together in Britain. Now, Joe, I'm not a solicitor. I'm not a barrister. I do not wear a wig to court the way they do. But in many ways, we borrowed our criminal justice system from our English neighbors. So there are a lot of similarities. One marked distinction is that we have a confrontation clause that requires witnesses against us to appear in court. They don't quite have the same thing. So you may expect to see victims testify by remote, maybe even with a barrier hiding their identity. But generally speaking, the process is pretty similar. You have the jurors, you have a judge, and you have a criminal prosecution that would mostly look pretty similar to what we have.
All right, Danny Savalos, thank you so much as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.